All right, what's going on, everyone? Jared Couture here from Kung Fu Music Lessons and Two Cities, One World. I'm here with the great Dean Brown today. Dean is an amazing musician. I'll have him tell you from his perspective, but I met him at Musicians Institute, I think 7 years ago. I took every class Dean had to offer and went to almost every OC and continued lessons because he has so much gold in there, just so much. So thanks so much, Dean, for being here.
Oh, I'm so happy to do it.
Thank you. So cool, man. First question or first thing, I just want, from your perspective, from your words, could you just tell everyone a little bit about your musical background, when you started and kind of the progression until now?
Sure. I mean, well, you know, I started playing guitar, I guess, kind of late. I was, I guess, around 12, something like that. I mean, in my mind, that's late because I see little kids 3 and 4 years old playing violin, like, playing Paganini and stuff. So, so I think 12. But, I think part of that is because guitar is, at least from my perspective, when I was a kid, like in the 60s, it was that instrument was more tethered to popular music, so it was like when you became interested in popular music, like in music in general, like you kind of switched from whatever type of ball you were playing with to a guitar. It was because music came into your universe as not something that somebody made you do, but something that you just liked, like the Beach Boys or whatever, or the Beatles or something like that. And so they played guitars. And so it was like, oh, that guitar seems cool. That was more of the inspiration for a lot of people, as opposed to the kind of thing where, you need to get more culture, so you need to learn a musical instrument, and so here, play the piano or the bugle or whatever. And so anyway, around 12, I started playing, and I started focusing really a lot more on guitar when I heard this record called Are You Experienced by Jimi Hendrix. And I remember vividly a poster when I was a kid. I was living in the DC area. My dad was in Vietnam at the time. And there were these posters around that just said, Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced? It didn't say what it was. It didn't say it was like a musical concert or anything like that. And so, it was this kind of mystical thing that we had, everybody kind of, just had to figure out, like, what is that, and so I bought this record, and I was just mesmerized. I didn't understand it at first. It was like nothing I'd ever heard, and I liked it way more than anything else that I had heard up to that time. And so I proceeded to figure out everything on it, right? And then a friend of mine who actually played guitar, or quote unquote played guitar, he knew more. He told me that I had the guitar tuned wrong. And so now all the stuff I learned, I just had to throw in the garbage. I couldn't, it wasn't, obviously I got a little bit of right hand or plectrum kind of technique from that. But all the left hand stuff was just useless, because it was, and not useless, obviously still got to press strings and do stuff, but it was pretty frustrating. And I quit playing for quite a few months, because I was so pissed off, and I wish at the end of the day, in retrospect, but hindsight's 20/20, but I wish I could remember what that tuning was, because it worked. It worked. I could, you know what I mean? It sounded right. Like the stuff sounded right, and so consequently, or subsequently, I learned this stuff again, but not quite to the same depth of peeling back the onion that I had done when I had it in this weird tuning. You know?
That's interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, so right after that, my parents, as I told you, my father was in the Army, so he had come back from Vietnam, and so I'm now really into music, you know, and I've got a band, a little band, and we're playing, you know, gig here and there and stuff, and then all of a sudden he says, "Hey, I've been stationed in Korea, and we're all going," and I didn't even know where Korea was, you know. So, and it was a kind of a panic situation because I was like, I'm in the center, you know, of where I need to be. It's like with music, I was on the East Coast. I was actually, at that time, we were living in Massachusetts, and there was so much going on, you know, Woodstock and all kinds of stuff going on. And now all of a sudden, I'm leaving it for, like, just in my mind, something that like where there's not even electricity. That's the way I thought, you know, that's what, and sure enough, when we landed in Korea, we had to go through this little quarantine thing, and then we got on this bus to drive from the military airport to where we were going to be staying. And during that ride, all I saw was like grass huts and stuff. So I'm thinking, like, my worst fears is that, man, there's no electricity here, you know. and it's but it's so stupid. But I mean, it was just, you know, I'm at that time I was like 14 or 15, something like that, 14 I think, and then finally we got to you know, the base that, or the military base that we were going to be living at, and I immediately decided to just go out to the teen club and just see if there were, like, anybody there that you know had any kind of interest in music or whatever. And sure enough, when I walk in the door, there was a band playing, like this teenage, you know, teen group, and they were playing popular songs that were a little bit dated, but they were, I knew them, you know what I mean? And they were like, and so I sat in with them, and I ended up kind of like taking over you know how I am, you know, I just kind of, I just took it over, and we ended up, in that situation, we ended up playing, this Korean agent heard us play a gig, like, at an NCO club. That's a non-commissioned officers club. There were different, you know, there's like a caste system in the Army, you know, there's like the officers club and the NCO club and the EM club, and you're not, none of those people, if you're a certain rank, you're not allowed to go to the other ones, but I could go because I was playing. But anyway, this guy heard us play and offered us the opportunity to play 7 nights a week at a club in downtown Seoul.
Wow.
And so we did it, you know, and I did that for 1.5 years with no breaks.
Oh my God.
And so I've never worked this much since, you know. But it was an amazing experience, and, you know, to talk about paying dues and, like, you know, constantly having to learn repertoire. And one of the things that made us very popular at that time, this would have been, I guess, 1970, 71 in there, something, was that we actually played, besides playing, you know, rock and soul and pop songs from the day, we also played Korean pop music. This is like way before K-pop, obviously.
Right.
But I guess it was the
Oh my! You could be leading the K-pop class
the
at MI.
prehistoric K-pop, and so we did that, and that we got so famous that I mean it was unbelievable. I had a bodyguard and a chauffeur, and we had a fan club, and it was crazy. It was just crazy. Moved back to the United States after that experience, and I remember stopping off on the way. We were headed back to the East Coast, but I stopped off in California, and I was staying with a friend in Monterey, I guess, or so it was actually Fort Ord or something like that. And near there was Carmel, and I guess that's kind of famous for the play Misty for Me, that movie where Clint Eastwood almost gets killed by some fan or something. Anyway, but Carmel's like this, really nice city on the West Coast, up north, Bay Area. And there was a music store. And in that music store on Sundays, they had a jam session. So now, I've been like the big fish in this not so little sea in Korea and sort of in Japan, Korea, because we played all over the place. And so I figure I'm going to go into this jam session and show everybody how it's done, And I go in there, and the first three people that played before me just like blew me away. It was like so far beyond what I was capable of as a guitarist, and it was like a wake up call, to say, oh, welcome back. Not to say that there weren't some great musicians in Korea, because there were. There was a lot of GIs, and I learned a lot. Matter of fact, that's where I kind of got my, had my path sort of changed from just sort of thinking about rock and soul and R&B to jazz. And because they turned me on to two records specifically. One was a record called, well, not so much the records, but these were the records that I remember. One was Coltrane. The name of the record is Coltrane. It's on Impulse. And it's a blue cover. It's my favorite, still to this day, my favorite Coltrane record. And then there was this other record by Wes Montgomery called Smokin' at the Half Note, very famous record. And so those two records kind of took me on a journey down this jazz avenue. Even though when I listened to them, I didn't even know what it was. I was listening to. As a matter of fact, when they were improvising, it was so alien to me that I didn't even realize that they were soloing over a form. It just sounded amazing, and it seemed insurmountable at the time. It seemed like, wow, this is just too much. But I did take elements of it and try to use it, without sort of really doing a deep dive. For me, it was just something I enjoyed listening to. It was like listening to classical music, but not really aspiring to be a classical guitarist. You know what I'm saying? And so I kind of came to jazz through the side door, and I think in the rock and blues and soul thing, I think really, really informed my playing when I play in a jazz context, which kind of, I think gives me a voice. And that's the kind, that's the whole thing that you're trying to search for as a musician, right? You want to find your voice so that you're able to tell stories to people. That's the whole, that's the whole game, right? Is to try to be able to communicate various things to people, whether it be lyrically or just instrumentally, in terms of emotions and information in general, So anyway, I went to, after that, I decided I took a semester off from school. I went to college in DC at first. I was at George Washington University, and I couldn't study music because I didn't have a classical repertoire. So I decided to be a musicology major, so at least I could take music courses, like theory and harmony and blah, 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 and different ear training, all the different, requisite courses that you would have to take to get a degree in whatever in music. But it wasn't me, man. It wasn't me. Even though obviously I learned a lot, but I didn't do well in that. I didn't thrive in that environment. My grades weren't good. I just wasn't inspired. So I took a semester off and went up to play with an R&B band in Massachusetts that was led by a guy that had been in the Army, a sax player, a good jazz blues sax player, that was in the 8th Army band, and he had formed this group up in Western Massachusetts, and 3 horns, keyboards, guitar, percussion, and drums and bass. So it was and we played music, anything from Junior Walker to like Cold Blood. You ever heard of that band? They had a famous singer named Lydia Pence. Bay Area kind of thing, sort of like Tower of Power. Mm-hmm. Sort of at this, maybe even earlier than Tower of Power, maybe not. There's some, but way back there, Anyway, I decided to go to Berklee, and I spent 5 semesters at Berklee. I graduated from there, and there's this. Everybody that goes to Berklee, we have this sort of, there's this sort of rite of passage is that you've got a gig before you graduated. So that it was like a badge of honor to not graduate because you got a gig and you got hired by somebody internationally known. But I graduated. But I always tell people, it's like, yeah, but I graduated in 5 semesters, and they say it still counts. It's like, it's like you can't graduate and get this sort of, the badge of honor that says you didn't graduate before you got a gig. But it didn't matter anyway. I was playing with a lot of different groups up there, and doing some odd jobs even just to try to pay rent, I wound up getting a gig with this guy named Tiger Okoshi, an incredible trumpet player, incredible educator, incredible writer. And a lot of people played with him. He was kind of like, I don't want to say this to disparage either name, but he was kind of like the Miles Davis of Boston. But he was his own thing. The fact that he played trumpet and the fact that everybody wanted to be in his band is what I'm referring to when I say the sort of Miles Davis reference. And So the original guitar player in his band was a guy named Bill Frisell. And I'm sure your listeners probably know who that is, right? The second guitar player in his band was a guy named Mike Stern.
Wow.
And so I think your listeners probably know that guy too,
Right.
you know? And then the third guitar player was yours truly. And so it was good lineage, you know what I mean? And it was a great way for me to sort of really develop my voice to kind of get known by the Boston community, you know, like everybody knew who played with Tiger, you know, and then the vicarious benefit is that now your name starts getting around without you promoting it. It's happening organically. And I moved to New York around 1978, 79, somewhere in there, and into Manhattan, because I figured I got to be in the belly of the beast if I'm gonna, you know. And not long after I moved there, I got the gig with Billy Cobham, and ended up playing with Billy Cobham up until a couple of years ago, on and off, you know. And through that gig, I ended up playing with, I was the original guitar player in Steve Smith's Vital Information, and then I played with Bob James, and there was a saxophonist in Bob James's band named Kirk Whalum, and famous, very, you know, wonderful career both in the jazz world and in the gospel world, you know, Kirk. And through them, I got introduced to Marcus Miller and also David Sanborn. So I was playing in those groups. And also, just from the New York scene, I met Mike and Randy Brecker, and George Whitty, the keyboard player that was playing with Mike and Randy. Before he was playing with Mike and Randy, he was playing in my band on Long Island, and so he recommended me for that. You see what I mean? It's all you know. A lot of people think that you have to kind of beat people over the head with who you are, you know. And I, you know, at the end of the day, I think the best thing you can do is just play as good as you can play, and just make sure that every time you play, you treat it like it's the last time you're going to play, even when you're practicing, you know. And then you'll be prepared if luck happens to, you know, knock on your door. And I think, you know, in my opinion, that's the most surefire way of becoming more successful and getting, and then of course you have to, now when you get to the other side of the business where where it's, you know, you're writing for commercial type things like television, there you've got to, you know, kind of put on a different hat. But if it's just about you getting known to play, you know, that's a word of mouth thing. Yeah, I had a degree in composition from Berkeley, right? But I never showed it to anybody to get a gig because it wouldn't have mattered. Although I did need it at MI, not to be able to teach there, because they asked me to teach at MI, and we'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But they asked me to teach at MI, sort of as a kind of a special kind of situation, not teaching. I wasn't teaching any, as you know, any core classes, just electives and basically just electives and OC and maybe a private lesson here and there. That was the sort of thing. Anyway, so that's throughout all this, like I said, even since I was 13, I always had my own bands, always, because I always, whether I was right or wrong, I always had a way that I heard things, and I knew that I couldn't, and I didn't really want to do it somebody else's way. So I figured the best way to deal with that is to make just to have my own group and sort of treat those groups like benevolent dictatorships, where it's like, where I encourage people to bring in music, and play their stuff, and I encourage people to bring their creativity and their opinions and all that. But at the end of the day, the kind of final.
A lot of musicians really don't care. They just want their money, and they're coming for the gig and they're out.
Yeah, but that's
sometimes
yeah, and I think that's true. I think that's true to a certain degree. But I mean, there's a difference between a working musician and an artist.
Yes.
So anyway, I mean, I think that's kind of in a nutshell, my career. But,
right on. And you've been doing some amazing things though lately in the past, maybe 10 years or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of recording and a lot of gigs. There's, especially with my own. I think since I want to say since 2001, I've really done a hell of a lot more touring under my own name, and not only touring, but recording and sort of just all the vicarious things that go along with being recognized as an artist, as opposed to a sideman or whatever.
Yeah, I love it. You're such an amazing. I mean, like your songs are so good, So definitely, it's definitely good that to have you as your own. As your own band, of course.
Now listen. I don't know. I'm still, to this day, I'm still a student. And I'm not I listen to like YouTubes and Instagram and stuff, and I'm looking for stuff all the time. To steal.
Yeah.
Because that's. If you're not doing that, if you're not expanding your lexicon, and it's not like you can learn everything. That's never what it's about. It's always been about you hear something, and if it moves you owe it to yourself to figure out what that is, because then you can, if that moved you, then if you learn it, you can probably move somebody else with it, because it came through your heart, as opposed to coming through your sort of intellect, and so that's an important thing. It's so much easier to tell a story that you believe than one that you're just reading.